So we're going to kick things off, get us warmed up for all of our engagement today with the Zoom waterfall. So small crew, so we already can see each other's names, locations, etc. in our participant list. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just take a second, take about a minute here to think about your dream vacation spot and get it ready in the chat, but don't hit send yet. I'm going to give us a countdown, a 3-second countdown, and I'll have you hit send all at once. So our responses kind of flood into the chat together like a waterfall. Sound good? Okay, seeing head nods. Okay, cool. So go ahead and get your response ready in the chat, and Lisa and myself will do the same. And I'll give us about 10 more seconds to get your responses in, and then I'll give us a countdown. Okay, everybody, hope your responses are ready. Hit send in 3, 2, 1. Oh, everyone got ahead of me. That's okay. And now let's take a sec to review and see where everyone is maybe going this summer or maybe at some point in the future. Susan's very open-minded, so if anyone has any vacation plans, you can invite her along. She'll be a good +1. Milwaukee, Caribbean island, got a +1 that. Croatia, lots of islands and beachy vibes I'm seeing so far. Oh my gosh, Eric, that sounds very picturesque.
It really is, and it's surrounded by trees, and it's just incredible.
Oh, gorgeous. Well, it sounds like you get to go there, so you get to make your dreams a reality. So good for you. We love to hear it. All right, wonderful. Well, thanks for playing along and just getting a little warmed up, getting to know who's in the room, starting to use the chat with me. With that, we will jump into the real content for today. Okay. So just a quick refresher and a little bit of a background on CIRCL, so we're all on the same page before we dive into our last 2 drivers here. So as many of you know at this point, you've heard me say it over and over again, but CIRCL is a research-based framework and associated collection of classroom-based practices for creating socially, culturally, and emotionally supportive learning communities. CIRCL is an evolution of the Carnegie Math Pathways Productive Persistence Package, which may sound familiar to some of you. Heather, I'm looking at you since you actually helped us develop that. The CIRCL framework and associated activities and routines are organized by these 6 key drivers that you see here on the screen, each of which are informed by research in psychology, culture and learning, and the learning sciences. A little bit of important context to keep in mind is that all of the practices listed in the CIRCL package are related to one or more of these drivers that you see on screen right now. And they've been adapted for use in actual classrooms from research with the help of real teachers and real students. So we've really spent time thinking about what does this mean in terms of the research and what we know about supporting student learning, and also what do we know about the realities of classroom practice and how to make those 2 things work together. These practices that you'll see in the CIRCL package that we'll be talking about today are not intended to be one size fits all. Local adaptations are really encouraged, and we do provide examples for how you might go about kind of adapting these things to better suit your context depending on how it looks. Also, one last thing I'll say is that CIRCL is a living resource. So meaning the CIRCL you see today might not be the CIRCL that you see like a month, 2 months, 6 months from now. So I encourage you to kind of continue coming back to the package. Just like Eric was saying at the start of the call that we want to keep revisiting these ideas for our students. It's good for us too, and there might be new information in there the next time you check it out. Okay, that was it and kind of the little bit of background, just making sure we all have some shared language and context around CIRCL. So now we can take a deep dive into those last 2 drivers that I mentioned, which are strengthening know-how and aligning systems. So as the slide kind of suggests, these 2 drivers really go hand in hand in helping students really effectively navigate their college experiences. They also help to kind of reinforce and strengthen all of the other 4 drivers that we've already talked about. If you don't mind moving us along. Okay, so one way we can think about it, one metaphor I've been workshopping lately, is by imagining students' mathematical journeys as a river. A beautiful river, it's full of wonder and challenge, and it's ready to take students on a ride to their sort of next destination, their next goal in life. So students need to be motivated to actually get themselves into this river in the first place. And in order to take that leap, that jump into the unknown, they kind of really need all of those four drivers that we've already talked about in these series this spring. So you need to feel like you really belong in the river, right? Like I am the river. I'm going to get in this river. I need to be able to see how getting in this river is going to help me reach my goals, my destinations. Otherwise, I'm going to definitely be hanging out on the shore, nice and dry, with like some snacks in my comfort zone. I need to know that, oh, not yet, Lisa. Giving away the punchline. No, just kidding. I need to know that despite the challenges that might pop up, that I'm capable of tackling them, and I have the skills I need to really like navigate successfully. I need to be able to manage my emotions when I'm in this river, right? Things might get a little scary at times. I need to be able to effectively manage that. And hopefully I'm also able to experience a little bit of joy while I'm swimming in this river. Okay, now we can move, Lisa. Okay, so we've gotten in the river, but now we're approaching kind of like our first big hurdle here. So maybe like the first exam, maybe like a particularly challenging module in the curriculum. So all of those beliefs and mindsets that I've already built up that got me in this river in the first place, those are still helpful, but they might not be enough, right? So what are the actual tools and equipment that I'm going to need to navigate this river? But in mathematics, rather than sort of like helmets and life jackets, what students really need are effective learning strategies, effective habits, and know-how about like how the college system works. So those are really like the tools that we're going to arm students with on their journey down this river. And then, but again, we can only arm students with so many tools, right, before it becomes sort of no longer helpful. So we have this kid here with like 8 life jackets on, and one might argue that 1 is enough and we don't really need 8, right? So there's a limit to how far these tools, these strategies are really going to get you. And so that's where we can start to think about sort of the waters, right? These are kind of like the systems and structures that students find themselves in every day in school, and how can we provide them with sort of the calmest environment possible on their journey. So they've got the mindsets that they need, they've got the tools and skills that they need, and they've got a calm environment that's going to support them to be successful. So that's sort of like a little analogy that I've worked out for thinking about these final 2 drivers, how they relate to each other, and how they support sort of all of the mindsets that we've already talked about kind of earlier on in these meetings this spring. I'm seeing lots of comments in the chat. Thank you, Eric, for the compliment. Okay, cool. So with that kind of metaphor in mind about why these 2 drivers matter, how they relate to all the other drivers, let's take a deep dive, get it, pun intended, into strengthening know-how. So this particular driver is defined as supporting students' ability to navigate educational systems and processes and employ effective research-backed learning strategies, which promotes agency and can reduce disparities in learning know-how, particularly for our first-generation students. It's kind of our working definition here. One important component of college know-how is being able to employ effective strategies. So research has shown sort of over and over again that while many students often study long hours, they'll continue to fail because they, generally speaking, use really ineffective, sort of shallow learning strategies. So things like highlighting things over and over again, rereading things, etc. But we know from research that deeper, more effective learning strategies actually exist and will help students reach their learning goals more quickly and efficiently. So providing these sort of explicit opportunities for students to learn about sort of the science of effective learning strategies and also practice adopting them into their routines can significantly enhance educational equity, particularly for our first generation college going students. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, it demystifies the academic experience, particularly for those students who might not have a pre-existing example like at home or in their immediate circle of what that looks like, right? If I'm a first generation student, I'm walking in here blind and I might not necessarily know what's required to like be good at school, right? So having space to like have conversations about sort of what it takes to be a good learner helps to kind of level the playing field for those students specifically. It also helps to bridge gaps in cultural and institutional knowledge and fosters a sense of belonging, right? It's this idea that if I feel like I understand how this system works and I know what the keys to success are, that makes me feel like I belong here in this classroom that much more, and I'm that much more motivated to succeed and sort of do what's necessary to succeed in this particular course. So that's kind of one component. And one final thing I'll say about sort of trying to navigate students and help them adopt more effective learning strategies is we're not necessarily trying to discourage them from using those low level learning strategies like highlighting and rereading. Those might actually work for certain students in certain contexts. But what we really want to do is provide space for students to like, first of all, reflect on that and say like, hey, are those strategies actually working for me? And then secondly, give them an opportunity to add more effective strategies to their existing kind of repertoire that they're using here. So it's like, okay, maybe highlighting really does work for you, but let's also try doing a practice test with a friend, right? And so it's all about kind of balancing those feel-good strategies and what students sort of think works for them with the things we know from sort of research and science. All right, and moving us right along. So one kind of helpful framework for thinking about effective learning strategies is this one that I have here from Daniel and Einstein. That's called the Knowledge, Belief, Commitment, and Planning Framework. So it starts with acquiring knowledge about strategies, which is generally speaking where a lot of sort of intro level study strategies courses at a lot of colleges will end, is just we're going to make students aware of the different learning strategies that are more effective, which is great. But it actually, what we know from the research is that it's not enough to change behavior, right? Just knowing something isn't enough for me to actually adopt it into my routine. What I also need is a belief that that strategy is going to work for me, a commitment to actually using that strategy, and a plan for how I'm going to implement that strategy. So we don't want to just stop our programs and sort of our supports for students at making them aware of things. We really want to think about the belief, commitment, and planning components as well. And how are we actually helping students like follow through on adopting a new behavior? Because I think we all know that that can be hard, right? Changing your routine, what you do normally, is difficult. Anyway, so that's one particular framework that we use in CIRCL to approach for these conversations with students and with our classes. Okay. And if you don't mind moving us along one more slide.
I just
Yeah.
want
I
to
raised my hand, if I may.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, I haven't been keeping up as much with the social cognitive theorists in the 20s yet, but that belief that a strategy works is similar to, but not the same as self-efficacy beliefs. And I know that in some of the surveys we've used that I really, really liked for the reports that it gave the instructors use the self-efficacy idea. Could you comment on that, please?
Sure. So you're right that those are two different things. A belief that a strategy works could be something that I acquire from, let's say, reading some research about it that shows me, you know, X students did better when they used this strategy or this strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It could also come from my own personal experience with that thing. Like, hey, I tried, quizzing myself with a friend, and I did way better on this test than the last test.
Yeah. So
that's definitely different, but definitely still related to this idea of self-efficacy, that like confidence and knowing that I can take on challenges and that I have what it takes to sort of succeed in a given setting.
You helped me out there big time. I would argue that maybe self-efficacy should be added to this. But anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
I think the idea is that having a really strong sense of like what strategies work for me and having like a repertoire of effective strategies helps you build that sense of self-efficacy, because you know, like, hey, I have my toolkit. I've been in this situation and I've tested myself, or I've done test retest, or I've done XYZ, and I was able to succeed through that last challenge. So they're related, but not exactly the same. All right, cool. Component of commitment. True. I would say that they're definitely related, Susan. I don't know if you want to come off mute and sort of elaborate on your comment.
Yeah, self-efficacy beliefs of the students for their own ability to deal with any of this are really, I think, foundational, right? If they don't believe they can do it, they're not even going to get to the point where they believe that this strategy works. You know what I mean? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know which came first, the chicken or the egg here.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of feel sometimes some of them don't have enough confidence, to admit that there could even be a different way than the ineffective ways they're using. I don't know. We got to
Yeah,
bolster their belief in making these good choices.
right. And there are a few ways that we can do that, or that we do that through CIRCL. Um, so here are three specific routines, but sort of the common thread through all of these is number one, giving students a time to reflect on their own strategy use. Like, how am I doing using the strategies that I'm using? Like, is it working for me or not? The second thing is making them aware of better strategies. And then the third thing that we do throughout all three of these routines that are listed on this screen is we make it communal, right? So it's not just you on your own being like, oh, I have terrible strategy use. I need to try something new. Like you and your crew of friends are all going to kind of commit to a new thing together and get to hold each other a little bit accountable for it. So that's kind of the beauty of some of these routines too, and making them really like a collective activity, not just an individual activity. Is you kind of have like other co-travelers along on the like, hey, we're gonna try something new journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, what's great about that is essentially you're forming a group problem solving where people are committing to solving a problem together and finding the best strategies to make it work. I mean, we need that writ large across every aspect of our lives, at least our
right,
social lives. But anyway, okay, thank
right.
you. This is damn, you guys do good stuff.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the engagement. And just adding to the conversation and bringing richness to it. So appreciate it. Um, so three specific routines and activities that we have in CIRCL that are designed to help promote know-how and strategy use are first and foremost the Learning Community Agreement. So this is an agreement at the start of the year or an activity that you do with students where you sort of go through what it's going to take to be successful in this course, what we can commit to ourselves in order to be successful, and what we can ask of our community and offer to our community to make sure that we're all successful together. And one important component of that is committing to sort of a study strategy, uh, or like a study sort of calendar, and an approach to sort of committing time outside of just the class itself to being successful. The second activity I have here is called Learning Strategies Discussions. So this is where we do that thing that I was just describing, where you have students literally think about sort of what are all the strategies that I've used so far to learn mathematics? Have they really helped me or not? And how do I know? And what's another strategy that I could add to this routine or try out and see if it works for me better? And that's again designed as a community-based activity. So everybody's kind of picking something that they're going to try. And then the last activity that we have is called intro and exit tickets. And what these are is a super quick routine that you can do either at the start or the end of a course, where you give a student time to reflect on sort of number one, what's something that I have really mastered in this course and I'm proud of and I could teach to somebody else. So really kind of trying to build up that confidence for them. Number two, what's something I still have questions about and could use help with? And then number three, what's a strategy that I can use to get help with that thing that I just mentioned? So they have to kind of explicitly write down, like, I'm going to ask a friend, I'm going to go to office hours, I'm going to quiz myself, like whatever their strategy is going to be. So those are three specific routines that we have in CIRCL that are related to this driver. And what we're going to do next is just take a minute to explore those resources. And then we'll just kind of hang out and do a little bit of a noticing, wondering after you do that. So go ahead and make your way to our CIRCL package, and I'll copy and paste the link into the chat right now in case that's easier for you than typing. Okay. So you have the link in the chat. And go ahead and maybe take about, let's start with 4 minutes to review those three activities. And when you're in the CIRCL package, if you make your way to the table of contents that's on the top of page 3, basically look for any routine that has that light blue strengthening know-how tag. So you could look at the 3 that I had mentioned previously, and maybe Lisa, if you could go back a slide so people have those listed. Perfect. So you could look for those 3, or you could look for any other one that has that light blue tag and take a look at it.
Looking at all of them? Like,
Uh,
what's the plan?
Not all of them. Just pick like maybe 2 or 3 to take a peek at in the next couple of minutes here. And then we're gonna come back, and then we'll come back together and see if you have questions, any sort of noticings from those activities. And I just popped the kind of plan for the next couple of minutes in the chat. So yeah, you'll take a minute to review, and then we'll come back and share any noticings, wonderings, questions, adaptations, etc. All right, folks, let's take about another minute to review your resources, and then we'll come back and I'll ask a few folks to share what they looked at and what they noticed. All right, friends, I am curious if I could get a couple volunteers to share, number 1, which practices you took a look at, and then number 2, any sort of reflections, anything you would do differently, anything you already do in your classrooms related to these ideas. Kind of interested to hear it all.
I got stuck on, so I was kind of looking for blue tags, and one that I saw said faculty emails, and I thought, faculty emails strengthening know-how. That doesn't sound like, I don't see the connection. So I opened that one to see, like, why does somebody think that they should tag that with a blue tag? And I still don't know the answer, having read it. But a couple things that just jumped out at me was they had this template, like, here's the sort of email that you could send to any student who is absent. Wow, do you know how many absent students I have every day? I cannot do this. That is not physically, like the amount of hours that I have in a day, that is not physically possible. What I do is when a student sends, if a student sends me an email that says, hey, I'm going to miss class because XYZ, I do respond with, I have a form letter because Outlook lets you build form letters, and I have a form letter that says that I can adjust slightly before I hit send, but it says basically, thanks for letting me know. Sorry you're sick. Please look on the LMS on the weekly, and I remind them where the folder is that tells them what we did that day. But the expectation that I have is that A, students will reach out to me, but also B, that they already know where that folder is. I don't have time to compose this. Like, I kind of think that was written by somebody who doesn't have like 100 students, 20 of whom are absent every single day. That's crazy. The other thing that I noticed was that it said students may prefer to be contacted on WhatsApp and whatever, and et cetera, other platforms outside of the school email system. That's true, but FERPA forbids me to just talk with students on those kind of platforms. And my college is very, well, they're not consistent about this in the sense that they don't tell us this often, but if you ask them, they will tell you, oh my gosh, absolutely do not interact with students on non-FERPA compliant platforms. So yeah, students may prefer that, but I'm not allowed to.
Well, I think you're bringing up some of the important contextual factors that sort of shape how you might actually implement this kind of thing. So both having large class sizes and school policies that maybe don't gel with this exactly how it's written is a good example of why we definitely encourage you to make adaptations and make these things kind of work for you and work best for you.
Yeah. So how do faculty emails, Like, how do those strengthen, like, what's the connection with strength and know-how that you?
Yeah. So I think there's two. I think the first one is the fact that coming to class consistently and regularly is one of the most powerful learning strategies you could employ, right? Because you can't learn the material and benefit from the supports of the community if you're not there. So I think that's the big one is just consistent class attendance is an important learning strategy. We might need to make that more clear in the description because I think that's a good point that you're bringing up, Susan. I think the second one, though, is kind of exactly what you're pointing to, is that in those emails, you also have like an open dialogue with students where you can do things like point them to the folder structure if that feels necessary, and sort of give them the tools to navigate the course and the systems more effectively if you notice that something seems off with them. So I think the idea is it's really opening up that line of communication for that like one-to-one support around like learning strategies and college know-how and things like that. Does that make sense, Susan? Or any reactions to that?
Oh, that was a yes. Yes, that does. I do think that reminding students of learning strategies and like, I am paying attention to you. It can be very helpful, and reminding them to come to class. It doesn't always, it's kind of interesting because even students who start off the semester letting me know that they're not going to be there, and I respond with an email that admittedly is a form letter that I have personalized slightly, but they stop letting me know that they're not going to come
Mm.
as the semester goes on. And I don't, so I, something's ineffective there, right? Like
Yeah, I think that would
maybe
take
they
some
feel
more.
guilty because now they've missed 40% of the classes or something.
Yeah, might take some tweaking. It might be a special case. You gotta like look at some data and really think about your context a little more deeply, which I'd be more than happy to do offline, by the way. Um, but I think it's a testament to how these things don't always work as written, and that they do take a little bit of massaging to get them to really like work in a way that works for you. Or it might be that one of these practices just like really isn't for your class, and like that's cool too. You know, it's more of a take what works for you and leave the rest kind of a vibe. Um, but thank you for sharing, and I appreciate the honest feedback and the questions. Can I get one more person to share sort of which did you look at and what did you notice? Any adaptations you would suggest, etc. By the way, I'm taking notes on all these things, and so kind of what we talk about today, I might add some tweaks to the package based on sort of your questions, your comments.
Eric?
If I'm talking too much, I'll defer to somebody. I did the intro and exit tickets.
Mhm.
And as usual, it led to a powerful understanding the stuff you guys give us. I rely on watching my students' faces and expecting them to be honest with me when I ask them, do you get it or don't you? And I'm sure a lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. An
Mhm.
intro exit ticket gives you empirical data to work with, and hopefully they'll be telling you the truth. Anyway, it just made me think of action research and that the value of empirically collected data about how your students are really thinking and doing in the moment.
Yeah,
And
totally.
you don't want to find out they don't understand fractions when they bomb the first test. It would be nice to know they got lost that day.
Totally. And yeah, it's the same way that it's useful information for you in all the ways that you just described using it. It's also useful information for students to be like, over time, I get these ideas, I don't, I need help with this thing, and to along the way be making adjustments versus waiting till cram right before the test and be like, oh, I don't know any of these things.
And,
Um,
and it keeps reemphasizing the finding the good strategies,
mhm,
which
mhm.
then becomes habitual.
Right, right.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
oh, bye, Heather. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, hopefully I can join in again soon, but thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Connie, were you trying to say something?
Yes, thanks, Lisa. So, as a former third grade teacher and then high school and also college, some of the different things that I was noticing in the routine section is actually routine for one, and then followed up by reinforcement, then reflect and reference. Actually, the word reference was in there for references, but I also think notes and referring back to what they learned. So it's like a complete cycle. But what I got out of the whole section there is really giving students a purpose for what is this lesson going to be about, and then building the routine through the reinforcement and the reflection and the referring back. And the kind of like the more I was sitting here thinking, it just like compounded from functionality. Like if you're learning how to ride a bike, you're functional at first, and you're probably going to watch somebody. You're probably going to try different, like sit on the bike and maybe pedal a little. And then before you know it, you're good enough to kind of go on your own, but you might still check back, right? And there's the reference point. So I was thinking about like functionality and practicality, and the function actually of math. Math is a function in itself.
Right.
Then that leads up to like the major compounding, the dynamics of all of it working together. Now I revisited a word I hadn't thought of for a long time, and that is gestalt. And I'm probably not saying it correctly. Gestalt, however you want to say it, but it's basically the dynamics of all of it working together. When you separately, you're building these routines. Sometimes you have to do that, kind of like parse it out, or the functionality of a routine. And then you keep building on that to where, okay, they've got this part where I think it was Susan said, or somebody said, okay, they need to know where their folder is. So I shouldn't have to tell them every day. That's part of that routine, relying on the fact that now they have that reference point, so that's sort of where my head was going from, like a flat kind of teaching. And actually it's really, and I love the word learning here because it's really about learning, not teaching. So what did you learn? Did you learn what I wanted you to get? Did you learn where the folder is? Did you learn, what the agreement is about? And in your intro and exit ticket, did you tell me what you learned? Not what I taught. Did you tell me what you learned? So, and the other thing, back to metacognition as well. This is all like metacognition. It's really, if we can get our students to high level, we're doing great. And sometimes they need that little bit of spark because they don't even know they have the high level in them, but they do. So that's kind of where my mind went. But anyway.
Super helpful. I love how you described it's not just linear, it's not just teaching people these things, right? But giving them opportunities to practice it, reflect it, really make it real for you. And that is very much sort of intentional design across all three of the ones that we have on the screen. So it's nice to hear sort of in your words how you reflected it. And I really liked your biking metaphor. So I might end up adding that into the package. That's great. Okay, I'm going to move us along. We could talk about learning strategies all day long, but I'm going to move us along to our last driver, which is aligning systems, which we define as, aligning systems. So sorry, I got a little lost in my notes here. So the definition for aligning systems is that CIRCL practices are really most effective when there's coherence between students' experiences in the classroom, as well as the policies, practices, and norms of sort of the wider school and sometimes even the wider district. And if you might move this along. Cool. So what we have here on this particular slide is we have these two researchers, Greg Walton and David Yeager, and they did a lot of the foundational research that is referenced throughout the CIRCL package. And they released a paper in 2020 called Seed and Soil, or part of the title is Seed and Soil. It's a much longer title, actually. But what they looked at was sort of the impact of practices like the ones that are in CIRCL across different school settings, some that are more supportive of the CIRCL framework and some that are less supportive of the CIRCL framework. And what they found was that schools that have what they call psychological affordance, so are more aligned with the CIRCL framework. They provide more affordances, more opportunities to develop these sort of positive mindsets, beliefs, behaviors, relationships. Those schools actually, you see greater impacts of these kinds of practices, and we see that they're sustained over longer periods of time. So the idea is that we have to plant good seeds, so these kinds of practices, routines, etc., in fertile soil in order for them to really have the most impact, right? But if I take these seeds of good ideas and I plant them in an environment that has counter signs, things that go against all of the things in CIRCL, those practices might not hold as strongly for students if I'm only experiencing these sort of wonderful routines in one class, but not my entire educational experience. So that's the idea behind seed and soil. It's kind of funny that these researchers had to write like a whole 30-page paper about it, because if you think about it, it's kind of obvious, right? And it makes a lot of sense. If I'm receiving messages that reinforce these good ideas and beliefs, I'm going to have stronger ones, right? But if I'm receiving messages that counter these beliefs, it's harder for me to really hold on to them and believe that they're true. And so if you might move us along one more time. So a few kind of concrete examples of how a policy, a practice, or a structure might impact me as a student and my sort of beliefs about myself as a learner, my sense of belonging, my sense of relevance, etc. So the first example here that I have is all around dress code policies. Oh, and sorry, the first two bullets on the green should have been flipped. So apologies, there's an error on this slide. What we have on the red are that sometimes we hear stories every couple of months about racist dress code policies. So in particular, we'll hear about a student filing a complaint against a school for hair discrimination, typically policies that punish students for traditionally Black hairstyles like braids, locks, extensions, etc. And you can imagine that if I'm at a school that punishes me for my hairstyle and the way that I want to express myself, that can impact how I show up in my math class, right? If I'm not even able to sort of express myself and wear my hair the way that I would like. Another example are things like zero tolerance policies, which we know from research disproportionately impact Black and Brown students. So things like suspension and expulsion also remove students from the learning environment, which can potentially impact their success moving forward. And if I'm a student who's being removed from a school, that can impact my sense of this is a place where I belong. This is a safe space for me. This is a place where I'm welcomed and respected, right? And so we try to move towards more restorative justice, where we allow students to remain in the setting that they're in and teach them practices for how to correct wrongs when they've made them. We also have things like high stakes testing and tracking, which are counter to the idea of embracing growth and that I can grow and learn new things with effort, right? High stakes testing and tracking really send the message to students that you have a certain amount of intelligence and you're in this category, and it's going to be really difficult for you to get out of that or move forward, right? So on the left, we have just examples of, again, policies that are pretty common across schools in the United States that are school-wide policies, but they impact how I might be showing up in my math class because of the messages that they send me. I'm going to pause there because there's some big ideas on this slide. Any questions, any comments, anything anyone wants me to dig more deeply into with these examples?
No, one thing I do want to say is even if the institution in which you work and teach is not really the way you want it to be, you can create your own environment in your classroom.
Certainly.
In green.
Oh, certainly. And that can have a massive impact on students. Having that one classroom where you feel safe and like you can be yourself can have a huge impact. But conversely, that classroom might have a bigger impact if the school itself was also aligned in that messaging, right? So I think we're on the same page there. And I don't mean to say that what you do in your classrooms doesn't matter. I just mean that it can be reinforced and supported by the larger school context as well. Cool. But I definitely agree in that we all have to kind of make the most of the schools that we're in and kind of work from within to make them better. Which leads me to, if you could scoot us along, So there are sort of three main activities within the CIRCL package that are designed to help you build sort of a classroom culture and classroom norms that are really supportive of CIRCL. A few examples are the Learning Community Agreement, the Normalizing Productive Struggle activity, and everyday practices for embracing growth. So the final component of each of those three activities is working with students to think about, given what we talked about in this activity and how we want our experiences to be in this classroom, sort of what systems need to be in place, what policies need to be in place in this class to help us do that. And so you get to kind of co-construct the classroom norms, the classroom policy, and the classroom culture, like with your students. So that's kind of the flavor behind these three activities. But again, they're really centered at that classroom level. And we know that there's more that we could be doing school-wide, which leads me to our next slide here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek right now into how the sausage is made, like how we develop these activities, what they look like sort of mid-stage. So what you have here on your screen is a link to a resource that's designed to help institutional leaders, so that could mean kind of lots of folks at your schools, examine existing policies and practices that might be impacting their students' social, cultural, and emotional well-being. There's sort of a two-parter here. So first, the activity provides a list of some of the most common policies and practices that can either support or hinder CIRCL. So you'll see that in a big spreadsheet that we have like a list of policies and practices in there, some examples of more supportive ones and some examples of less supportive ones. And then we also provide on sort of page 1 of the activity, like a conversation guide of how you might go about examining those policies with your colleagues. And in that conversation guide, we provide some like prompts, some questions that you might use, etc. So this is really intended to be like a starter resource for teachers and school leaders to think about systemic improvements you might make at your campuses. And we link to a bunch of additional resources like all throughout that resource. So this would not be the start and end of like solving sort of systems at your school, but it's meant to be a starter place and to link you to lots of other ideas and resources that could be helpful. Okay, so again, this is super drafty. It's incomplete. You're going to see like missing cells and like comments from me and like stuff highlighted. So this is very much an in-draft resource. What I would love to do is give you guys like 3 minutes to just review and then give me some feedback. Like what's resonating with you about this resource? Would you actually use it in your context? What's missing? What could make it more helpful? So that's the kind of feedback that I want from you. I'm kind of making you guys do my job for me a little bit right now. And I hope that that's okay and you're on board. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. Take a peek at that resource and let me know what you think. It's really kind of open-ended feedback. I'm going to start a timer for us. And if you have questions or comments as you're reviewing, feel free to come off mute if anything's unclear or you're not sure what you're looking at. Okay, friends. You are going to retain access to that document after this meeting. And you can feel free to leave comments on these things, like whatever you'd like to do to leave your feedback after this meeting, please continue. But for the sake of time and just making sure that I am respectful of yours and get you out of here on time, I will bring us back to the full group. And I'm just curious, anyone have any, Susan, I already saw your feedback in the chat, which is super helpful. Thank you. Exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for here. So yeah, I'm wondering if anyone would like to come off mute and kind of share some immediate reactions. Would you notice? Would you wonder? Is this helpful? Would you actually use this kind of a resource?
I'm kind of hoping that my colleague Samuel comment on what I'm going to say, but I'm feeling pretty lucky about where I work because the only area where we might get into trouble, but it's not institution wide, might be how some people handle assessment, like multiple attempts and things. But I what do you think, Sammy? Can you think of any policies like they're talking about at MATC that rub the students wrong?
Yeah, I think the one you mentioned, which would be the assessment that make the students not equal, because one teacher may give them multiple attempts or may videotape them and things like that. So that
Yeah.
other than that, everything seems to be okay.
Interesting. Well, I mean, it sounds like it was a helpful tool for confirming that you guys are on the right track, though, at least. Am I hearing that
Yeah.
right? Or is this
Yeah.
like,
No, indeed. But when I thought about it, how I would use it if I was at a place like that, I realized that it really presupposes that the person you're talking to know about CIRCL and be invested in it.
yep, yep,
I mean, I would be, but would the person you're interviewing like give a rip?
yep,
Because like what CIRCL? I don't care if our policies don't support it.
yep. There's definitely an element of buy-in. So it's maybe something you can provide is like, how would you invite someone to have this conversation? Like, what would they, do you share the CIRCL thing with them, give them a little background on why you think it's cool? So that's actually a good point. So maybe we can give people some starter language for like inviting a colleague into this kind of a conversation.
I want to provide empirical data that shows that this helped a statistically significant number of our students go higher and farther than ever before.
Yep, I love that. I know we're all math people, so we love a little data. Anybody else? Any other reflections? Oh, go ahead, Connie.
I think too, it's very helpful to have that champion or champions. So if you've got a great team that's already implementing, maybe even if the leadership isn't already noticing or doesn't realize all the benefits, then the champions can
Right.
help them.
Yeah. And so it's like, how do we,
Anyone who's a stakeholder who needs to know.
right? And how do we give those champions the information they need? Oh, bye, Susan. Thank you so much for everything.
Bye.
Lovely having you. But yeah, how do we arm those champions with like the messaging, the email template, the whatever, the data, to Eric's point, that they'll need to like convince others like, hey, join my team here. It's a good idea. Okay. Okay, cool.
It is a challenge because sometimes some of our champions are seemingly stronger leaders than others.
Yep.
And that is a tough one, really.
Mhm.
But hopefully there's a champion for the champions.
Yeah.
And again, like I really like that Lisa has been.
Oh no, I feel like it was best.
Engaging our faculty in, but by letting our leadership know is important.
You cut out for just a little bit there, but were you talking about the importance of Lisa sort of looping y'all in on opportunities like this?
This and also looping our presidents and higher leadership in
Oh, okay.
on the benefits of the math pathways and
Yep.
what CIRCL offers, that kind of thing, because they've got so much coming at them. All of us do, really. And so if we can, and the design of this, the CIRCL, as well as, the colorfulness and it's pretty engaging itself. And it's also realistic is the thing. We can't have something that's not like manageable. So I think in itself, the package is very well put together.
Oh,
I'm also curious, just really quick off the top of your heads, and since Connie, you also are on the administrative side of things, but for all of you to consider, would creating an administrator-focused training around CIRCL be something you think folks would be receptive to? It would obviously be, I think, more condensed and have a bit of a different focus.
yeah,
But
we could adjust things for the audience, pull out the stuff that's most relevant for those roles and things.
I know our associate dean, acting dean, Josie would probably come because she knows a lot about what we're doing or is involved in all the controversy. So she'd want to learn more.
I am at a tribal college and there are a lot of joys and there's also a lot of challenges. And sometimes one of the challenges is that our leadership doesn't always know which direction to go. I'm just going to be honest. And so if we give them the best of the best and help them to see the best, that will help them a lot. Otherwise, if they're relying on the folks below them, and I don't mean to, make it sound like it's a hierarchy, I'm not, but the folks who are middle management per se might not know either. And so we've got faculty members perhaps or department chairs making decisions for the whole student population when they might be missing a piece. And this is a really important piece. And Lisa, the struggles our college has been going through regarding math. And it's like, I just, you just want to hit them over the head. Anyway, you can't.
Yeah.
I think higher ups are interested in two things: cost and success rate. They don't look at anything else. That's the only thing you can get to them. So it's very hard to actually have them get ideas about how to improve or to have more students know math. And I think math is the most important thing anyone can learn. There are people who know math, people that don't know math. And we know that if you know your math, you will be much more successful than the one that they don't. So then they don't get that. They'll just look at the cost and the success rate.
Mm-hmm.
It does make a good point, and I wonder if also connected with Eric's point about providing evidence of the longer term impact would be useful. I mean, graduation and retention, I think, are driving a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for cost analysis, every student that you retain has a benefit for the campus. So I would think there's some winning argument there.
What's interesting is our dean is now, is he the provost or some kind of what's Sadiq now, Sammy?
He's the assistant to the provost.
Okay, assistant to the provost.
We get all the information to him. Like for us in the math, the same role as before.
He's very much interested in supporting QuantWave, but interestingly, he didn't realize that my annual renewal system was 1 year different than he was thinking. So he tasked me with all this performance goal development stuff. But here's why I'm making this connection. It was based on our success rates. I have access to this huge data set and I've figured out how to use it. And he keeps pushing me to do that. And what I realize is this CIRCL might be something that's going to add what's missing to our success rates, because our success rates are not so good. Even though the curriculum's wonderful and we're pretty experienced users of it, something's missing. And anyway, it's all kind of piecing together. I think I'm going to try to set up an action research project. That's not the focus, is actually doing this. See if it helps with the success rate I'm having.
Yeah.
And as a CIRCL activity, I see that the times are there. So you could do a short CIRCL activity every class.
Yeah.
What I want to add too, from a tribal college standpoint, is our students and community are all about circles and also community. And that is built into this big time. And the other thing I want to say, and I think I did see it on one of the early slides, strategies. So to me, the curriculum may be tweaked here or there a little bit. I know this curriculum is awesome with a lot of, real life scenarios and things like that. But the strategies are really important, especially in this day and age when our students are competing, their minds are competing with a lot of things. And our faculty members are trying really hard to engage them. So